Okay, Shalom Aleichem. Welcome back to 30 Letters in 30 Days. We are going through letters that the Lubavitcher Rebbe wrote to people from all walks of life about all types of real human issues. These are all letters from Chelik Yud, that's volume 10 of the Igros Kodesh, which are all from the year 1955. But if you've been with us for the past two nights, I think you'll agree that these letters read like they could have been written today. Before we jump into letter number 3, which is our letter tonight, I just wanted to mention a couple of orders of business that are pertinent right now if you're watching live. First of all, we want to clarify, the people have been asking if this is a women's class or if it's open for all. So I want to explain. The class is open for all. However, there's been a very special emphasis and a koch, an excitement on behalf of the women, which was very painstakingly planned and carried out by the Vad Oyer V'Chaimais Kashrus Women's Division. And the Zoom, if you're on the Zoom right now, it was specially made for women. Men are welcome to watch live on YouTube. There's no limit to how many people can watch on YouTube live. And if you're watching the archived version, then none of this is applicable to you. Also, I just want to mention, I mentioned last night, but I'll mention again regarding the women, that they have been organizing groups all over the world, cities all over the world. I believe there are now 40 groups of women and of girls who are getting together at various times throughout this course and discussing these letters and really taking it to heart. If you would like to lead a group, you can contact us at the website, 30days30letters.com. And also at the website, you can sign the duch, that's the report that we will be bringing on Yud Aleph Nisan to the oil to report to the Rebbe about this birthday gift, this wonderful birthday gift that we are putting together here. I want to clarify also, there will be a shir tomorrow night. Tomorrow night is the night of Kriyas Megillah. We have enough time to break our fasts, to hear Kriyas Megillah, and to get online, or at least I do. So maybe no one else will be on live but me, and everyone else will watch it tomorrow or the next day. But however you do it is fine. But yes, I will be here live with Hashem's help tomorrow night, the night of Kriyas Megillah. Furthermore, as crazy as it sounds, there will be a class Thursday night, the night of the Purim Suda. And in fact, not only there will be a class, there will be a double class, because the way we're doing 30 letters in 30 days is we have to cover a letter every single day. Friday night, we have no way to make use of this technology. It's Shabbos. So Thursday night is Lechem Mishnah. We'll have a double portion, and we'll have 2 letters and an hour-long class on Thursday night. And that will be happening not just in spite of Purim, but because of Purim. We'll be there, Purimdik, in a Purim spirit. And again, maybe I'll be the only one there, but you're all invited to watch the archived replay. Okay, without further ado, let us jump in to letter number 3 in our packet. If you don't have the packet yet, it is on Amazon, and as of last tally, it was number 10 in Jewish books on Amazon. How about that? And maybe if we make a concerted effort, we can get it up to number 1 just for fun. Okay. Oh, and if you don't have the book, the PDF is available. Again, everything is at 30letters30days.com, and the PDF is there, and everything, all the resources you need. Okay. Here we go. This letter, I'll begin. Baruch Hashem, Chof Ches Tishrei Tafshin Tes Vav. We're now after the high holidays. Remember, the last 2 letters we had were both in the middle of the high holidays. Now the high holidays are over, and it's the end of the month of Tishrei. Brooklyn, again, the Rebbe addresses that he's in Brooklyn. Bracha v'shalom, blessings and greetings. Again, this is when the Rebbe is writing to a woman. Before I begin, I just want to give you a little bit of a heads up, I guess. The Rebbe is writing to somebody who is in pain. We didn't really have that in the first two letters. This is someone who clearly, we don't see the letter that they wrote to the Rebbe, but we can easily surmise from the Rebbe's response. This person wrote to the Rebbe about a painful personal issue. Specifically, as we'll see from context, the issue of infertility. And I just want everyone to sort of notice how the Rebbe responds to a person in pain. Obviously with compassion and in a gentle manner and in a way of validating this person's pain. But there's another aspect to the Rebbe's response as well, which to me is quite characteristic of the way that Rebbe responds to people who are reaching out in some type of a crisis. And it's a little bit surprising, it's unconventional, but I think once you notice that it's such a constant pattern in the way that Rebbe responds to people, I think you'll realize that it's really the most effective way and the truest way and the most respectful way of responding to somebody who's going through a hard time right now in life. Okay, let's see what the Rebbe says. I want to verify that I've received your letter. Bli horos zman haksiva, that does not have any indication of the date. She didn't date her letter. I always wondered why does, if someone didn't write the date on the letter, the Rebbe will always say that you didn't date the letter. And then I realized that I'm so used to email threads where you have timestamps on everything and everything's in order and it's very easy to tell who said what and when. But when you're writing actual paper letters, it is very important to make sure you're referring to a specific letter and you use the date to do so. So the Rebbe is saying, I can't refer to the date because you didn't give me a date. Okay. Ukevekashosa, and according to her request, apparently this woman requested that what? Hinene oine olav mibli lechakes alatur afilu shel michtavim hamehirim val seder michtava. I'm going to fast forward your letter. I'm going to respond to your letter ahead of the line. I'm going to let it jump the line, even the urgent letters and the letters that were written earlier. So the Rebbe is telling her that I'm acceding to your request. Obviously, that itself is validating that this woman wrote clearly, in a desperate frame of mind, or she wouldn't have asked the Rebbe to skip the line. And the Rebbe is validating that and saying, yes, I am skipping the line for you. So that right there is validating. Hine Pella. It is a wonder. Pella is like, this is crazy. It's a completely unfathomable. Okay. It's interesting to me. I've noticed the Rebbe will use this expression sometimes, like, this is a wonder. Like I don't even understand how this could possibly be. And again, this is all according to my humble opinion. But it seems to me that the Rebbe is training us how to think. And sometimes there are things that we say as just as axiomatic, like, well, that's just the way that it is. And the Rebbe wants to challenge that and say, oh, that's what you think is normal? No. That's actually a pella to me. It's actually shocking that you're saying that. So the Rebbe is sort of like challenging that which we think is taken for granted. And the Rebbe is saying, no, don't take that for granted. To the contrary, it's not even true. And then conversely, as you'll see in this letter itself, more than one time, I think even more than twice, the Rebbe will do the exact opposite as well and teach us that some things that we thought were wondrous and we couldn't understand or fathom, the Rebbe teaches us that, no, actually that's the axiom, that's the normal thing, and that's the thing that you should just take for granted as being true. It's very interesting. I'll point it out as it happens. At any rate, so what does the Rebbe say as a pella? What's a wonder? Mashemaschila, this how she started her letter. The Rebbe is speaking in third person. That's how the Rebbe writes it, in the honorable way in Hebrew to write in the third person. Maybe I'll just say in second person because it's easier on the English ear. what you wrote in the beginning of your letter, I don't know if it's a quote, but it's the Rebbe saying this is what she wrote: Shekova hanitzu tuachrein v'chulu, that the last spark has gone out. It sounds like she means the last spark of hope, meaning my situation is now completely beyond hope. Okay, so the Rebbe is saying that is a pella that you're speaking that way. Ki me'ayin lo'odem yedias ke'elu. Where would a person know such a thing? In other words, the Rebbe is challenging her despondent attitude and saying, where do you get this from? Like, what are you basing yourself on? Is there a logic that you're following to this conclusion? And then the Rebbe proceeds to explain to her that her conclusion is completely off base. I once heard somebody say that what's a pessimist? An emes cheshbon mit a falshe maskana. Meaning he has correct data, but his conclusion is off the mark. So the Rebbe is saying, and in fact, here the Rebbe is even saying your data isn't correct. Let's see what the Rebbe says. It seems like your entire foundation, meaning the crux of your argument for why your situation is hopeless, is your age. Okay, and I told you this is a letter about fertility. So I don't know how old this woman was who wrote to the Rebbe, but it seems that she wrote and said, I'm beyond childbearing years, there's nothing I can do, and it's too late. All right, so the Rebbe says, it seems like the crux of your whole logical argument is your age. But that's not a proof whatsoever. That's not compelling. As we find both in the words of our sages, as well as we see for ourselves. The Rebbe says two things. First of all, we find in the words of our sages. I'm not sure exactly what the Rebbe is referring to, but there are places where it refers to, in halacha, what's considered a woman of childbearing age. So this could be the reference. The Rebbe doesn't say specifically, but the Rebbe says in addition to the fact that we know from Torah, also we see for ourselves, meaning, I guess the Rebbe is implying, you know women who are older than you who had children. Women older than you gave birth to sons and daughters. And the Rebbe says plural, sons and daughters. Maybe that's a diuk. Okay. So that's first of all. I don't understand your argument. But in addition, and here's the real point. If you look at the world, you'll see that, and the Rebbe uses, he says the lashon hakosuf, which means the scriptural phrase, how great are your works, how many are your works, how great are your works. This means quantitatively, qualitatively. When you look at creation, the vastness of creation. It is impossible la'odem echad, for one person, lahakifu lahasik es kol ha'inyanim, to wrap his mind around and understand everything in the world. Okay? Look at the vastness of the world, the complexity of creation that God made, and you will see there's no one person who can get it all. V'gam lo yafilu chelik choshev mehem. There's not even one person who can understand most of what's going on in the world. V'gam lo yafilu rubam shelo inyanim enimtzoim b'hadalad amish shaloi v'negei lechayev aprotim. In fact, there's no one, this is a strong statement, who can even understand all of what's going on right in his very own backyard. Things that affect his own life. And he can't understand it all. So look around, you'll see that's readily apparent. V'lochin, therefore, nifredu b'nei adam lemumchim b'miktzayes shonim. That's why in the world you have different expertise. You have people who have an expertise in one thing or that thing. The lawyer doesn't practice medicine, the doctor doesn't practice law, and neither of them do what the plumber does. You have specializations in the world. Why? Because no one person knows everything. No one's going to give a confident opinion except in his field of expertise. And then regarding other topics that he's not an expert in, he relies on the people that are experts. It's very interesting here. What the Rebbe is about to say is, how can we know Hashem's ways? And there are many philosophical proofs that have been given throughout the ages to prove that finite mortal man can never understand an infinite God. The proof that Rebbe gives here is it's so accessible, so just everyday and relevant. The Rebbe says, just look at the world around you. You want to tell me you can understand Hashem's ways? We don't even have anybody who can understand everything that all people understand. If you take the sum aggregate of human knowledge, there's no one who knows all that stuff, and that's why people are broken up into specializations. This guy knows this guy knows that. So how are you going to say that you know that the last spark of hope has gone out and you're never going to have a child? Like, where do you get this from? What are you basing yourself on? There's no logical reason to say this. Very interesting. In reference to our present discussion, meaning about fertility. Now, although it is true, the Rebbe says that Torah gives credence to the opinions of doctors and even bases the halacha on the doctor's opinion in certain cases. And it seems that Rebbe is talking about Shulchan Aruch Orach Chaim Shin Chof Ches. That's chapter 328 of Orach Chaim, where it speaks about a chayla on Shabbos, that if the doctor says he's sick, so that's good enough. We go based on doctors. So the Rebbe says 100% we listen to doctors. Torah says listen to doctors. Okay, fine, granted, no problem. And also the Rebbe mentions Umanhag Hosei shall kol echod va'achas, and everybody's conduct hu laseis kairos hareifim b'hanegel ha'maisa b'pel mamish. You're supposed to follow what the doctor says when it comes to practical instruction. So if the doctor gives you a prescription, he tells you take this medicine or do this therapy or whatever it is, so we listen. Torah says you listen to what the doctor says as far as practical instruction. Fine. Granted, no problem. Aval, however, together with that, with the fact that we do what the doctor tells us to do, Ladas bara bilvava, you have to know clear in your heart, Asher Hashem yisbarach hu areifa kol basar. The Eibishter is the one who's really healing. Hashem is the healer. He's the one who's running the whole world, literally. Hashem's running the particular lives of every individual. Hashem is running every little meticulous detail, especially when it comes to something so important, meaning like having children. So yeah, we listen to the doctor, what the doctor tells us to do. Fine, no problem. Did the doctor tell you to do anything? Did the doctor give you any instructions? Doctors' instructions are different than doctors' opinions, or even prognosis, by the way, which it's going to become clear as we get into this. Okay? So the Rebbe is contextualizing the validity of medical opinions. Yes, the medical opinion is very important. And halacha says to follow it. But that's when it's talking about giving you a course of action. But not to use some type of medical opinion to make a statement that you're not going to have children. Watch what happens. Kinira michtava lehoya be'inyan now chavas das reife mumche. Now, your letter wasn't even, it appears, the Rebbe says, your letter wasn't even based on a doctor's opinion. Doesn't seem you were even basing yourself on a doctor's opinion. But even if you were to have consulted with somebody, the number of times where doctors are wrong about these things is beyond our ability to count. So, first of all, I don't even think you got a doctor's opinion. But even if you were to tell me you got a doctor's opinion, doctors can be wrong about these kinds of prognoses. So rather, the whole thing is about your strength of bitachon. In other words, the Rebbe is flipping it here. It has nothing to do with medical science at this point. It has to do with bitachon. Should mention, by the way, there's a story of the Tzemach Tzedek, the third Rebbe of Chabad. And he told a doctor once, and this story we know from the Sichos of the Frierdiker Rebbe. The Frierdiker Rebbe told this story second night of Rosh Hashanah, Tov Shin Hey. And it's printed in the Sichos of Tov Shin Hey of would have been still 1944. But this is a story that the Frierdiker Rebbe told, and the Rebbe actually told many times as well, that a doctor once gave a grim prognosis to the Tzemach Tzedek, and the Tzemach Tzedek said, listen, Reshus nitna l'reifel l'rapes. Permission was granted to the healer to heal. That's true. The healer, the doctor, has permission to heal. But that's all. He has permission to heal. Not permission to make proclamations or to say a prognosis or especially nothing grim or morbid. So in fact, he said the expression in Yiddish that the Tzemach Tzedek used is, he said that if the doctor oversteps his bounds and now he's no longer guiding you how to do treatment, but he's actually saying scary or morbid or negative things, then werter ois macher. He's not a macher anymore. He lost his power. He has a power to heal. That's it. Not the power to make a grim prognosis. So at any rate, the Rebbe is saying, I don't think you even had a doctor tell you this, but even if a doctor were to have told you, it's not important. Okay, let's continue here. So it's not about the doctors, it's about bitachon. It's about your bitachon and your connection to the creator of the world. And how do you connect to the creator of the world? You have faith in your day-to-day life that Hashem is with you, and that's going to cause you to be happy. Now, watch the pivot. So the Rebbe validated her pain. He said, I took your letter ahead of all the other letters like you requested. Then the Rebbe starts to question, more than question, the Rebbe said it's a pella. The Rebbe objects to the basis of her argument, where she's expecting negative things. And now watch what happens. The Rebbe turns the whole subject of the letter into, okay, now we've spoken about what you need, but now let's talk about what you're needed for. So the Rebbe is writing to someone who's in pain, who's in crisis, who said, answer my letter urgently. And the Rebbe does that, allays her fears by saying, there's really nothing to worry about and you should just trust in Hashem. And then the Rebbe goes one more step and says, and now let's talk about what you're doing for the good of the Jewish people. You got to get to work. We need you. We need your talents. we need your participation in accomplishing the goal. So I understand that you're going through a hard time right now, but what about what the world needs from you? And I find that so uplifting that when somebody comes to you at their darkest hour. So first, yes, obviously validate and allay their fears, but then let them know, you're not this nebuch, this downcast, down and out, this ne'er-do-well, this person who's coming here pitiful. No, to the contrary, you're strong, you're powerful, you have a contribution to make, and that all that worrying you have about your problem, it's actually detracting from you making your contribution. So let's talk about your contribution now. And the Rebbe completely pivots now at this point in the letter. Okay, so the Rebbe said you're going to be happy if you have bitachon. And now the Rebbe talks about another happiness. V'gam simchas hayachelis lifel davar ma b'shvil hasviva asher goydel aschus b'zeh ein l'shar. Another happiness that you could have is the happiness that you have in your ability to have an influence on your environment. And the merit of doing so is way beyond our ability to estimate. Remember last night's letter, the Rebbe was speaking to Mrs. Sharfstein about being an early adopter of covering her hair with a sheitel and talking about how when you're an early adopter, you have a great merit. So similarly here, the Rebbe is saying, you have a contribution to make. And when you do that, when you influence your surroundings, you have an incredible merit from that. Okay. Yedua piskama Baal Shem Tov. It's known, the saying of the Baal Shem Tov. Asher neshama yeredes lamata le'lam hazeh lemeshech shel shivim shmeinim shana b'shvil lases teva pam achas liyisrael begashmias eberuchnias. The Baal Shem Tov said that a soul may come to this world and live a lifespan of 70 or 80 years just to do a favor for another Jew, either materially or spiritually. Listen to what the Rebbe says here. Umi kamehu kaha Baal Shem Tov. Who is like the Baal Shem Tov? Who can compare to the Baal Shem Tov? Shehavin geidel hayarida shel neshama mi igra rama lebira amikta bevias neshama la'ilam hazeh. Who could comprehend as well as the Baal Shem Tov how great that descent is? The Baal Shem Tov said that a neshama could come down to this world for a whole lifetime just to do a favor for another. And the Rebbe is saying, now, come down to this world? You think that's a small thing for a neshama to come from its lofty heights in paradise and come down to a physical world full of distractions, temptations, and limited in its physical body? You think that's a small deal? It's not a small deal. It's a very big descent for the neshama. And the Baal Shem Tov understood how great of a descent that would be. Or that is. Ubechol zeh, notwithstanding that, Amar Kanal, he said this statement. Meaning, somebody who doesn't understand how massive of a descent it is for the soul to come to this world, they might say, hey, yeah, but it's worth it if you do a favor for somebody. But when the Baal Shem Tov understands what a massive descent it is, and still says it could be for the sake of doing a favor for someone else, that makes a statement. And then the Rebbe adds, not only did the Baal Shem Tov say this, the Baal Shem Tov actually handed down this statement. He transmitted it to us. Not only Baal Shem Tov said it, but he transmitted it to us, which means we're supposed to know about this. And even in these times, or maybe especially in these times of deep, dark golus. Befrat, how the Rebbe gets personal. So that's about every soul. Every soul that comes to this world came here to help someone else. You're not here for you. You're not here for you. You're here for the mission. You're here to be of influence on your surroundings. That's for everyone. That's a universal truth. Now that Rebbe gets personal, says, especially you. Especially you. Ubefrat k'shemadubarhu ve'isha tzira. Especially we're talking about a young woman. That Rebbe was writing to a young woman. Now he calls her a young woman, so I'm not sure how old she was that she was concerned about infertility. She did not yet fully use all of her powers to influence her surroundings, to arouse in them the good in their souls. By the way, that itself, you could fabrang a whole night on just those two words. Hatoiv shebenafshim. The good that's in their souls. When the Rebbe tells her to influence the people in her immediate surroundings, how does he tell her to influence them? To bring out their innate goodness that they already have. I mean, just those two words. Okay. Ulachazkei betoiv, and to strengthen them in goodness. And what is toiv? What's goodness? Ve'in toiv ala Torah mitzvah. We're talking about learning Torah, doing mitzvahs. So you have so much power to influence people. Get to work. And I don't just mean to influence them to get involved, to do Torah and mitzvahs on Shabbos and on Yom Tov. Ella bedafke ubediuk bechaya yem yemim asher yesh toyim lemer shehem yomim afurim. I mean that you should influence those around you to especially to realize how to express their Jewishness on regular mundane days, not Shabbos days and not Yom Tov days, the days that people mistakenly think of as being gloomy days, mundane days. Ube'emes, ein nitzcha kol hasbara v'ariches lavar nekuda pshuta kazu. And the truth is, I don't even need to belabor this point. I don't have to explain this at length. Remember I told you earlier that Rebbe teaches us things that we thought were normal, that Rebbe tells us, no, they're actually shocking. And things that we think are shocking, like, I never heard that before, that Rebbe wants to teach us that it shouldn't shock us. We should take it as obvious. See, I've thought about this, and again, this is my humble opinion. The Rebbe will use expressions like similar to this, where the Rebbe says, needless to say, it doesn't even need to be explained. Okay, but apparently she did need to have it explained, as evident from the fact that the Rebbe is explaining it here. It strikes me that what the Rebbe is doing is telling us, like, not only is the Rebbe explaining it, but he's telling us that really, I want this idea to you to be obvious. The Rebbe says, it's so obvious it doesn't even need to be explained. Well, apparently it did need to be explained, and the Rebbe is explaining it. But the Rebbe is teaching us here that something we thought was a big chiddush, a big novelty, totally out of the box thinking, the Rebbe wants to tell us, no, actually, that should be your axiom. That should just be taken for granted as truth. It shouldn't really blow your mind. The thing that you said before about losing all hope, that blew my mind. That was crazy. But the idea that a young woman who has so much talent should be influencing her surroundings, that's not a mind-blowing idea. That's like such a simple idea. It doesn't even need to be explained. Okay. Umaspika rak machshava achas. All you have to do is just think for a second. Asher kol achad va'achas mibnei Yisrael shem mibnei Avram Yitzchak v'Yankiv harihu chelik mehamechaber asabeda v'habriya. Think about the fact that every single Jew, being a descendant of Abraham, Isaac, and Jacob, is a portion of that which connects the Creator to the creation. Now, I'm very cognizant of the time right now, and I would love to talk to you at length about this expression, the connection between Creator and creation. And maybe some other time, in some other forum, we will, because in one place, I'll tell you where, in the Rebbe's English forward to the bilingual Tanya, the Rebbe says that is basically the main idea of Chassidus Chabad, that the Jew should serve as the creator and the connection between the Creator and the creation. But at any rate, I have to move quickly, so I will. All right, so think for a second. Every Jew is a link between Creator and creation. This is powerful. In their regular life, the way that it is. This is a very deep, I'm sorry, I know I'm going over time, but I cannot let this not to be said. The Rebbe is saying that a Jew, just in their life as it is, and the Rebbe is going to add then on top of that then when you teach them to observe mitzvahs, then it's even more so. But just in a Jew's life, just the fact that they walk this earth and they live is already a link between Creator and creation. There was a sicha from a Fabrengen, Shabbos Vayikra Tafshin Nun. And the Rebbe was speaking about current events, and some people had said some not nice things about not yet observant Jewish people, and about punishments and negative things like that, which the Rebbe did not countenance. And the Rebbe said at that Sikha, Parshas Vayikra Tafshin Nun, that the Haftorah of Parshas Vayikra, we didn't read it last week because we had Zachar, but the Haftorah of Parshas Vayikra starts with Hashem saying, Am Zu, this nation, the Jewish people, Yitzarti li, I made them for myself. And that the Jewish people are Hashem's creation in a very special way, where just as Hashem is eternal, so to his people were endowed with that DNA, so to speak, and they are an eternal people. And therefore, the Rebbe said at that Fabrengen, every Jew, especially after the Holocaust, who walks this earth and lives and breathes, is a lebedika nes, is a living miracle. I just had to share that point where the Rebbe is saying, seemingly in just a couple of words, that idea, encapsulating that idea, that every Jew is a connection between Creator and creation, just in their regular day-to-day life. And then, of course, obviously, we supplement, we add to that with Torah mitzvahs. I don't want to call it adding, God forbid, because it sounds like two separate things. We bring out even greater revelation of that essence through Torah mitzvahs. Okay, kamei shehem ubefrat, and then especially ayidei pu'ulais hanal, the activities that I'm encouraging you to get involved in, meaning to help people to get more involved in Torah mitzvahs. V'chiber zehu tachlis kol habriya kula, and this connection between creator and creation that is brought about by the Jew, both by their regular life and their observance of Torah mitzvahs, that connection is the point of creation. By the way, that's Hashgacha Pratis, that's the Tanya that we're learning right now in Chitas. Okay, let's continue here. Bevadai lamoisa lohaisif. It is certainly superfluous to add. And again, I just want to point out, that's one of a common expression. It's a common expression that Rebbe will use. Similarly, we had before. It doesn't even need to be elaborated upon. And here the Rebbe is saying again, it's superfluous to add. And again, I believe it's that same idea that the Rebbe is saying, I want you to feel as sure about this as I do. I want you to feel like this is so obvious that there's nothing to even question about it. So the Rebbe is modeling for us the pshitos, the absolute certainty with which we should be viewing this idea. Okay, so it certainly does not even need to be explained. It's superfluous to explain. Asher ein kavanosi b'chol anal lemait chas v'sholem ho inyan de ben ubas. Nothing I've just said is coming to minimize the pain of not yet having a son or a daughter. Okay, so the Rebbe is again validating her pain, just as the Rebbe did in the very beginning by telling her that he's answering her letter urgently. So nothing here is one doesn't have anything to do with the other. The fact that you're going through pain, I know you're going through pain, and we spoke about that. We spoke about what to do, to increase in your bitachon. And don't make negative, morbid prognoses upon yourself. But then I had to tell you that the main thing you need to hear right now is about getting to work. And now that I've told you that you need to get to work, I just want to make sure that it's clear. It doesn't diminish one iota that, of course, it's a very serious thing and it's a very painful thing that you don't yet have children. I'm just trying to point out the absolute truth. There's absolutely no grounds for sadness. The woman wrote to him in a depressed state. I was saying there's no basis for that. And especially not the way you wrote, despair, that you've given up. Adarabba, ve'adarabba. To the contrary and to the contrary. No despair. Hope, only hope. One more little subject here. Regarding her question about moving, apparently in this heartfelt letter where she expressed her despair, where she felt that she was not going to be able to have a child, she clearly mentioned that she was thinking about moving. So the Rebbe mentions that. And secondly, but more importantly, meaning the main idea, taking in a foster child. That's what it sounds like. Taking in a child into your house to educate. So what is the Rebbe going to tell her about moving, and more importantly, about the idea of taking in a foster child? Does not sound like adoption. It sounds, at least to me, it sounds like more of a foster type situation. Harei zeh toloi. This is going to depend, meaning the answer depends. Depends on something. On what? Bahashpo sheyeh lezeh aleha v'al bailo sheyichya. How is this going to affect you and your husband? Meaning emotionally. How will it affect you emotionally? V'im al yedei zeh, if through this, through moving or taking in a child, Yitosef simcha, will it make you happier? V'tischazik midas bitchoina b'Hashem yisbarich, will it strengthen your betochen in Hashem? Specifically, asher yamali mishaloisam l'teva b'zarachai v'kayama, that Hashem will grant you your desire for a child? If this is going to be part of your surrender strategy, of just accepting, no, I'm never going to have a child, so we'll foster a child and we'll never have our own biological child, that I was saying, then no, I'm not for it. But if taking in a child will be part of your plan how to move forward and eventually merit to have your own biological children and to do so happily, then yeah, great. Fantastic. You tell me how it's going to affect you. And then that'll be your answer. Then bevadei nochen adavar, then for sure it's a good thing if it's going to cheer you up, if it's going to be uplifting, but not if it's part of anything that has anything to do with despair. Okay. Now here's another little part. Ukmeduma shekvar kesavti lahem pam b'michtavi. I think I one time wrote to them. I think that Rebbe is saying jointly to the woman and her husband. Miyusad al achas hasicha shel kvei kedushas meiri v'chomi admur. I wrote to them something based on one of the sichas of my father-in-law, my Rebbe, my father-in-law. That what? Asher af shemuchach sheha'adam yaseh cheshbon benafshay. Even though it is true that a person must take personal stock, that's called moral inventory, cheshbon nefesh. Even though that is true, yes. B'chol zeh, nevertheless, muchach gam kein shelo yezeh ela b'zmanim miyuchadim. It has to only be at special times. Ki belav hochi, because if not, meruba hahefsid ala schar. You're going to lose more than you gain. So yes, there has to be something called cheshbon nefesh, but don't do it constantly. You know, it's very interesting. There's a Gemara in Brochas Daf Chof Ches Amud Beis that says when Rabbi Yechanim and Zakkai, the great leader of the Jewish people during the pivotal time of the destruction of the Second Temple and the reestablishment of Jewish life following the Churban. So Rabbi Yechanim and Zakkai, when he was passing away, he said something very puzzling. He said, I see two ways before me, one to paradise and one to the opposite. And he said, Ve'eni yadeya, I don't know, be'eze derech melichin, I say, which path are they going to take me to? And many, throughout the ages, many of the great minds have asked, how could Rabbi Yechanim and Zakkai, this great leader, be uncertain about his ultimate reward? How could he not know that he was a great tzaddik? And the Rebbe actually offered a novel explanation. This is brought in a sicha, in Likutei Sichos. It's actually originally from a Maimer, Leisia Mishakela, Tavshin Yud Beis, but it's also brought in part in a sicha in Chelik Tes Zayin of Likutei Sichos, Parshas Mishpatim, that Rabbi Yechanim Zakkai at the end of his life wasn't sure of whether he was going to be rewarded or not. How could he be so oblivious? How could he not know? How? Because he was so busy doing good things his whole life. He was so productive. He hadn't had time to take inventory. At any rate, the point is that Rebbe is saying here not to never do inventory your whole life. That Rebbe is just saying, don't constantly do inventory, because the main thing is you got to stay focused on the work, and there's so much work to be done. All right, let's finish up here. V'kalach masiyas cheshbon nefesh b'chol yom or yafilu pam b'shvua. Stop doing a cheshbon nefesh. Stop doing a stock taking every day, and not even once a week. Umutav asher tashkia kishrei neiseha. Instead, I want you to immerse your talents, not in stock taking, but I want you to immerse your talents bepu'ules toivos, in good actions, ba'ashpo al asviva, in influencing your environment, like the Rebbe was speaking about earlier. You're so talented, you have such a contribution to make. Please, don't worry about your your fertility issue. It's going to be fine. Have bitachon in Hashem. And stop with the cheshbon nefesh. Just focus on doing stuff to influence others because you have so much to offer others. V'akadosh Baruch Hu, mishalim mida keneged mida, Hashem will pay you back in kind for all that good you're doing for others. El shekama pomim kacha. But when Hashem pays you back, measure for measure, it will be abundantly, disproportionately greater, because that is the way of Hashem. Bivracha, l'simcha, l'b'schuras tevis, b'chol anal, with a blessing for happiness. Again, the Rebbe stresses the happiness, and that you should be able to report good news about all we have spoken about. Good night.